It's very interesting, and I like the reaction that has come from different people in different groups. Some have even criticized President Mahama for stating it because they said it is obvious. But it has an effect on both the MPP and the NDC in very different ways. Whether the president should have done it or not, I think the answer is yes, he should. What he did was correct. Because we've all heard the rumors, as you said, and this is something that has been said by many presidents in the past to give assurances to the people, because we still have a very fragile democracy. And Article 66(2) says a person shall not be elected to hold office as president for more than 2 terms. That's all it said. It's one of the shortest articles in there. We know that there's 2 consecutive terms. There may be terms that are not consecutive. What really did the Constitution mean? So a president who has been elected with such a big majority as President Mahama can begin a process of national engagement about this. It may waste the people's time. He may not succeed, but he will be able to achieve it. And that can even slow down the nation. So if he comes and says, I'm not doing it, I think it is. Akufo-Addo said the same thing, didn't he? Akufo-Addo had done 2 consecutive terms, but he found occasion to say that I'm not running for a 3rd term. It's always important to calm people down. Now, what does it do to the NDC? There are good and there are not so good parts. Now, to the NDC, what it does is that President Mahama may have, by making this statement boldly and confidently, whilst it helps the nation, he may have, in de facto terms, kick-started the contest within the NDC for his succession. Because you will notice that if you are an NDC person or a big NDC minister, and President Mahama comes in the 2nd term, wins such a big margin, very popular at the time, you would want to gauge how the next 1 year, 2 years is going to go before you stick out your neck, unless you are very bold, or unless you have done it, you have already told your story before. Now, if the president decides that he wants to engage the general public about the meaning of Article 66, either by a constitutional amendment process, one of which we have is underway, or by a Supreme Court interpretation, as minister and as a loyalist of the president, you have to abide by that and wait for that process to finish before you can now stick out your neck and say, I'm running or I'm not running. So if I want to look at individuals, for instance, if you take a person like the Honorable Minister for Education, the Honorable Haruna Idrisu, President Mahama's statement has taken off the limit that the Dagbani culture and Islam may have placed on him in this conversation. What is the limit that the Dagbani culture places on him? He's a Dagbani. Dagbanis recognize elderhood.
You mean Dagomba?
Dagomba.
Yeah,
Yes,
Dagomba is the language.
Sorry. Dagomba culture.
Dagomba culture, yeah.
Dagombas recognize elderhood. And to all intents and purposes, Idrisu Haruna will see President Mahama as his elder. Now, you don't go and start a contest when you don't know when your elder in that situation wants to do.
Yeah.
So somebody like Haruna Idrisu's ambition, if there is any, would have been kept until this announcement. Now President Mahama says, I am not doing it. So he's able to begin the thinking. And many NDC leaders would have to resist that temptation to receive this information as a de facto signal of the beginning of the contest. If you are Julius Debra and you're chief of staff of the president, you would have to definitely hold your horses until you are clear in your mind what the president wants to do with this matter. Maybe the president wants to settle this matter once and for all. What did the Constitution mean? What do the people of Ghana want? If the president decides there's going to be a process, you have to wait until that process is over. But now, the president has said that I'm not running. So almost de facto terms, people can start running, which may not be very good for the country, but can politicians resist that temptation? I don't know. If you come to the lead candidate, the party chairman, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, even though people talk about it and we all know, he's not really come out clearly to say anything. But now, the boss says that he's not running. And so all of these opportunities open up. So we have to look and gauge in the media space and within the political circles what that happens, what that does to the NDC. But in terms of President Mahama's announcement, it's perfect and it's positive. Even President Donald Trump, we had heard when he became president that he and some of his supporters were contemplating this. And in America, it may be easier than it is in Ghana because they have had, until the 22nd Amendment, they had presidents who can run more than 2 terms, 2 consecutive terms. Franklin Roosevelt, I believe, was the last person to have done that. And then in 1951, they brought the amendment. So an American president can say that, okay, let's go back to pre-22nd Amendment. So that may be easier. Ghana is more difficult because we don't have that situation. But because our democracy is young, it is important that the leaders make these statements so that they solidify the democracy and then we move on. Some may even think President Mahama should have taken the opportunity for us to settle this. That's another view. For the NPP, there were those who felt that if President Mahama decides to begin any process towards another term, it was positive for the NPP because some of them were sure that if this happens, this is an own goal the NDC is scoring. Ghanaians were going to resist it, and Ghanaians thereby were going to resist NDC, and the 2028 elections will happen as planned, and the NPP was going to take advantage of that. So there were people in the NPP who thought that, let's keep quiet and let's see whether he does it, because if he does, it's actually good for us. Now, that own goal will no longer be scored. And so the NPP must now look fairly and squarely at other ways in which they can win the 2028 election, because if this was one of the ways that they were contemplating, surely, certainly, now it's gone. So that is the effect that this announcement is going to have on the nation, on the constitutional democracy, positive, on the NDC, potentially. It is a de facto signal that, hey, guys, you can begin the process, which is not good for the government because it's a new government, less than a year old. You don't want the process to begin. And this is part of the difficulties that was expressed ahead of the 2004 election, because this cycle of changing the president, if you look at the constitutional arrangement, is designed to occur every other election. It's not designed to occur this election and the next election, because this nation always suffers. The economy always suffers from it. So in 2024's election, you are changing the president because he's finished his 2 terms. It is anticipated that the president who comes would also be able to run 2 terms. And so you have a longer period and then you don't have a fragile government so early. But here is a case where 2024, we have changed the president, and then the next election, we are changing the president again. So, and we are very early in it. And this always happens in a second term. Once you turn a second term and the oath is taken by the president for the last time, quickly the whistle is blown and people start. So we would have preferred that to happen for the sake of the economy and for the sake of the nation and running it. Every other election, not back-to-back elections, but well, that's what we are saddled with. That is what the dictates of our constitution says. That's what the people of Ghana actually voted for. So we have to deal with it, but we have to be hopeful and hope that we can count on the magnanimity of the leaders in the NDC, that whereas they are entitled to go for this, they may have to slow it down a bit in favor of the work that has been given to them by the president and by the government to run. Because if soon we see ministers at each other's throats over the succession, the country suffers. I mean, politicians on the opposite side may be excited about it, but it's always never really good for the country. We want unison. If President Mahama was definitely running, you won't have people thinking Atuforsen getting suspicious of this. The party chairman is in the race. Chief of staff seems to be in the race. Let's hope that we can build on the magnanimity of Honorable Suhini and his friends, that they would hold their horses and perhaps draw this in maybe January 2027 or something like that. It might not be helped by the NPP's early Congress, because as soon as the NPP elects his leader, he will get on the campaign trail and start it. There will be, so we just the effects of President Mahama's announcement, and we just have to rely on the magnanimity of the NDC leadership so that we can coast through until we are ready for a battle.
Now, it's an interesting point you raised, Paul, because I recall, it must have been this week. I heard the national chairman of the party, that's Asidin Ketia, talk about the same issue where he says those who are peaking ahead of time, relax, because if the NDC doesn't succeed, it doesn't matter who the NDC puts up in 2028, they'll struggle. So it looks like there are issues, and it appears that people have already started lobbying and doing all kinds of things. So it sort of addresses the point that you made. But I want us to see a bit on, Alassane, I'll come to you, a bit on what this announcement means for NDC and NPP politics. You talked about how some persons within the NPP, for instance, are thinking that, look, if Mahama wants to go again, that'll be scoring an own goal. So then, that's an advantage to them. But there are also some who are saying that, look, if Mahama does not go, so within the same NPP, what this means for whoever wins, and of course, those who are saying this are more like proponents of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, adherents of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, saying that if Mahmoud Bawumia goes in the 2028 elections, now it is not a Mahama. So essentially the grounds would have been softer, or things would have been much easier for them in 2028. What do you make of that as well?
Well, it's difficult to tell what will happen in 2028 because in this country we have had political parties believe that a certain opponent in the other party is weaker, and that opponent has defeated them.
Yeah.
It happened in 2000. In 1998, the NDC were happy that Adom-Otchere Akufo-Addo was defeated in Sunyani, and that Kufuor was a candidate that they could manage better. Kufuor defeated them. Some people hold the theory, yes, they were having a conversation, and some held the theory that proposition is true, because if Akufo-Addo had been the candidate in 2000, the MPP would have won a first straight round victory because he was popular. Others think that no, the issues that may have plagued him in 2008 would have come up in 2000 as well, etc., etc. Since the defeat of John Mahama in 2016, proponents of the MPP had always held for the 2020 election and for the 2024 election that Mahama is a cool chop. You've had Mustafa Hamid and others talk about, oh, they want to bring Mahama, oh, that's easy for us. And you have heard arguments about NDC should change their candidates, Mahama is a spent force and all of that. So there was some thinking that John Mahama was always an easier run for the NPP in any election. We saw what happened. In 2020, we saw what happened. And in 2024, we saw what happened. So, yes, some people may think that, oh, if Mahama is not there, we have an easier deal. Yeah. And you may get a candidate who can come up and deal with it. There's the conversation about second-time candidates work, candidates work. I think that is basically correct in political marketing. When you have a candidate that has been repeated, basically it makes sense that people would like him. But I think the youth of Ghana are demanding more than that, and we saw that in the 2024 elections, where some of the data and some of the statistics that came out cannot be seen in any of the past elections that had been run. It should suggest to us, if we trust the results of 2024, that something dramatic is going on within the Ghanaian voting population, within the Ghanaian social stratification of politics. Otherwise, how did we come to an election in 2028 where as many as 2 million people all across the north, in Accra, everywhere, in NDC areas, in MPP areas, together 2 million people did not turn up to cast their ballot. And that was not because they were disinterested. Perhaps we have to have a research to look at that. Right. Was it as a result of disinterest? Because there are two ways in which people boycott a vote. They are either boycotting to make a statement or they are not interested. So I don't think that the 2 million people who didn't vote as a result of disinterest in the matter. I think they were making a statement. For some people, they were making a statement against their own party. For some people, they were making a statement against politics in general. Right. So it should tell us that there is a major turning point. And that happened, this turning point about the youth happened in France before our election. Perhaps we were not watching. When the Macron government was rudely shocked into a first round election that the far right almost won. And everybody in France had to rise up for the second round to make sure that the far right doesn't win. But they never thought that anybody in 2024 will be thinking about bringing in a far right government into a Central European country like France. But the young people were demanding something, and the campaign promises of the far right sounded very sexy to them. And so they went out there, they voted. So we shouldn't think that there are some principles that will follow. So for Dr. Bawumia and his team, I believe that they are not particularly excited that once we are elected, we have a second term and therefore we have very little to do and we'll just pick it up. Okay. No one is just going to pick up 2028 election. Hard questions are going to be asked by the youth. Many questions. So I can see the point historically is being correct. Repeating candidates is basically correct for political marketing. But the kind of young people and the demands they are making and the influence of social media and the connection with other countries is radically changing the minds of the people. And I said before that if 2028 does not deliver, Ghana may be heading towards an independent candidate winning elections one day. That's interesting. Because the people, it happened in Benin. And if you go to Benin today, they have not regretted voting for an independent candidate. Look at what is happening in Benin. So the political class must, I think, abandon the historical sort of indications and deal with what is before them. Okay. Take your victim as you have it. They should deal with what is before them. Right. This is the youth of Ghana. This is what they are demanding. Whether we are second on the ballot, whether we've come before, whether we've come, it doesn't really matter.